I don't understand when a person's spiritual path involves trying to unlearn obvious facts about reality. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Mm-hmm.
Like the example that I like some things are good, some things are bad. When assessed from a human perspective. Like, babies understand this. They understand that being fed is better than being hungry. That's why they scream when they're hungry, and they're quiet and contented when they've been fed, assuming everything else is going well, right? So an infant is non-conflicted about the fact that, full belly's better than empty. Not a problem. And then you have to become an adult in order to not be stupid, but learn a particular type of stupidity and a particular type of duplicity that says, I'm going to pretend like I don't know that's true. I'm going to pretend like I don't know that I'd rather be healthy than unhealthy. I'm going to pretend like I don't realize that I'd rather have money than not. I'm going to pretend like I don't really know that I would like to be with the person I'd like to be with. I'm going to pretend like I'm uncertain about those things, And to me, it's like, that doesn't seem like the best way to go about that. To me, the spirituality element would be finding ways to respond more resourcefully to the fact that you feel the way that you do, that you have preferences that are the way that they are, and that are as changeable as they are and as unchangeable as they are, right? And that reality sometimes conflicts with those preferences. Like, spirituality is that. It is that unerring commitment to, is it unerring? It's that commitment to responding resourcefully regardless of that to which you are responding. Responding resourcefully to what is, without regard for what is at a given moment in time. Like, if you just stop and think about that for a minute, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
That's really interesting. And recognize there are layers to what is. This is kind of like the life loop. I mean, that's essentially what is divided into 7 convenient categories for your consideration. Thinking, feeling, doing, like perceiving. This isn't out of order, but like reality, all this different, like external reality and all this stuff. To me, I don't know. There's something kind of ostentatious and fundamentally inauthentic about pretending like am I beyond the desires of this world, or am I beyond unsophisticated, ineffective, inelegant, reactive kind of outbursts when the desires of this world are unfulfilled? Very different. Spirituality isn't, I don't drink alcohol, I don't have sex, I don't make money. Spirituality is that when the desires that I have in this world aren't met, rather than despairing or giving up or blaming somebody else, in short, rather than doing what doesn't work, I'm committed to finding and identifying and adopting what will work.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. Everything else is superfluous. 90% of what's superfluous is probably bullshit. Not everything that's superfluous, not everything that's not essential is bullshit. Only about 90% of it is. Do you know what I mean? And that's that thing, is like, how is what I'm learning here, or how is what's being talked about here, helping me, equipping me, stimulating me, provoking me, challenging me to respond more resourcefully to whatever. To the extent that that's true, it's spiritual,
Mm-hmm.
Now, what's interesting is that in a lot of the interesting thing about that is that every spiritual tradition, ultimately, what we're trying to do, end suffering. Suffering is not pleasant, and so we want to get away from it. You know what I mean? What you don't want is unpleasant, so you want to get away from it. Now, a lot of them set up kind of gobbledygook worldviews that aren't accurate, and then they say, given the fact these things are true, we want you to respond resourcefully. Given the fact that you'll go to hell if you don't believe in this guy, believe in this guy. But they make responding resourcefully so idiosyncratic and so context dependent,
Mm-hmm.
that the pattern gets lost, and it's also based upon premises that are, to say that you pull them out of your ass is to give them way too much credit, because if something came out of your ass like a scroll, at least I would say, my goodness, where did that come from? You just literally confabulated that. You just made these things up, as far as we know.
Mm-hmm.
But if you just say to a person, and I don't understand, part of it is that, it's difficult to teach a person to respond resourcefully, or to cultivate within themselves a commitment to resourceful response.
Mm-hmm.
Because people, for the same reason that, you can talk about Jesus Christ, but for most people, that's not as effective as showing a picture. or a carving. Well, I mean, literally, like there was a split in the Roman Church about this, about whether it was okay to use iconography, right? Because I mean, people like to look at that stuff, but other people said, "Oh, it's idolatry. We can't do that." And yet, there's this insatiable urge to look at that, you know. And the interesting thing is that the idolatry had already begun, in that you had taken a thing called imagination and represented it as a human being, a single entity, personality that lived in time. That's the ultimate idolatry. So that had already happened, because you can't just talk about imagination, because Joe Schmo is like, well, what's that? You know, I can't see it. But if I can tell you he's a man, it's like, okay, we have certain ideas about what he looks like, you know? I always got, it was distracting to me, because I was like, oh, so Jesus had a penis. That's weird. You know what I mean? Like, and I would think about that, you know, because the logical thing is that, like, you know, he's going to the bathroom, he's eating, you know, he's got this anatomy, right? He's noticed things about my body, and I'm like, he was a man. Huh, interesting. You know what I mean?
Yes.
It's funny. That's why I don't want you thinking too much. They want you terrified about what's going to happen to you after you die. Because if you start thinking about it, it's just fucking hilarious. But so the idolatry already happened, and that you take something abstract and you make it, you compromise the integrity of what it is by making it easier to understand. You know, essentially what it is I want you to be able to understand this without having to really wake up and pay attention, when really waking up and paying attention is the whole point anyway. The reason that understanding it is useful is that it requires you to wake up and pay attention, right? You don't wake up and pay attention because there's some understanding that you're going to get that's going to really just save you or make your life wonderful. The thing is, waking up and paying attention is going to save you and make your life wonderful, right? And then you'll notice some interesting things. But you're not waking up to do something. You know, the value of wanting to understand is that hopefully that desire to understand will stir you to wake up. And then, I mean, it's kind of like people who are asking about the point of life, and if they want to have an intellectual understanding. Like, if I have to, in order for me to feel good about the fact that I exist, I have to sit down and run through a sequence of events, and I can say, God made me and wants me to do this, and da-da-da-da-da. If I have to have a conceptual understanding of the point of life in order for me to feel like there is a point, I'm missing the point. The point of life is an experiential thing. You know what I mean? And so, one of the things for me is, people want to, this idolatry thing is a major problem. This is kind of incessant, constant. What do I have to do? What do I have to give up? What do I mean? Well, you know, people. I had this on the phone yesterday. Someone asking me permission to do something, you know, with our kind of coaching arrangement, because they felt like they didn't like the fact they needed my permission to do things. They felt like they were dependent on me too much, so they wanted me to give them permission to do something so that they would need less permission from me to break the habit. And I was like, well, why don't we just start right now? I'm not going to tell you what to do. How about that? You have to. It's very interesting. You know what I mean? And so, why can't, what if the highest spiritual achievement is just, learning to deal with your shit more effectively? What if that's it? Really? What if that's it? What if it's learning to interact with your significant other in a way that's more fulfilling? What if it's learning to, you know, deal with the vicissitudes of your daily life? Being in the body that you're in, living in the time that you're in. Learning to deal with the fact that social media exists more elegantly and more, you know what I mean? Like creating a better quality experience. That's your work. That's your task. It's not bad. Your task is to figure out how to create more of what you want and less of what you don't. You know, that's it. To enjoy existence more. Now, you know, how do you create more of what you want and less of what you don't? Well, one, you learn to interact with reality in ways that cause it to behave the way you want it to more. But also, multiple levels, you also learn how to respond resourcefully when reality doesn't do the things that you want it to do. Because that's going to let you create more of what you want, kind of at the experiential level. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
And you have plenty of stuff to do when you mind your own business like this. Like when you make this incredibly simple thing your project. Oh, we say, well, that's all there is to it. I need to know something about cosmology. Tell me about what the planets are doing, and tell me about God's plan for my life and all this different stuff. You know, if you would just sit down and learn how to deal with the fact that you and you're where you are in your life, and you want to be over here, and you would really commit to figuring out how much can I get out of life? How much can I enjoy myself? You know what I'm saying? How much can I draw a circle around everything and respond resourcefully to the whole thing and win the whole game? You know what I mean? You would be busy until you just drop dead. And that would be great for you and for everyone. You know, because then you won't be bothering other people.
That's so good, yes.
You know?
Oh my God.
But people think that spirituality is something other than that, you know. And so we got to talk about things like the ego. Oh, that's in the ego, or the ego saying that. And they talk about it like it's a real thing. Like, none of this shit is real. None of it is real. No thing, no noun is real. You know? Process, verbs. There's some reality to verbs. You know what I mean? There's some reality to activity. There's some reality to process. There's no reality. I'm sorry, there's no person named Steve. When you're sending money to me to like be involved in my stuff, that you're sending to, I don't exist. There's just a bunch of processes, you know? Now, I mean, interpersonally, if I crash into you and when we're driving down the road, I'm not going to go to court and say I don't exist, right? Because for the purposes of adjudication, I exist. You know, but at like the level of reality, right, when we're talking about things, that's why I like to talk about activities. And that's why I like to ask people how what they're doing is working. You know what I'm saying? And, you know, did you see what you're doing just there? Because people, they want to tell you about what their problem is. Or they want to describe to you what they think their theory of life is. Blah, 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 and this and that, and blah, 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 blah. And meanwhile, you can tell that they're miserable. Or you can tell that they're talking about all of this stuff that they're convinced is so fucking important, and they're totally overlooking the fact that this preoccupation with whatever it is they're preoccupied with has done nothing to improve the areas of life where they want to get better results. That's interesting. Isn't that interesting?
Yes.
And that's my whole thing is like, I want to get better at life, and I want to get better at like doing life, and like, oh, here's a client who doesn't get what I'm talking about. I want to get better at helping that person understand what I'm saying. Because I want to be better at it. You know, at that root, that's what it is. And now see, oh, that's selfish. No, it's not. Not really. Or selfishness is good, because if I make it about me wanting to be better at helping them, if they don't get it, I never get frustrated with them and say, I'm only trying to help you. Never happens. I say, that's interesting. What I'm doing is not working. You know?
Yep.
And if a person would just say that to themselves in every, you know, with their diet, with their exercise, with their finances, with their relationship, with the way that they're talking to themselves. I mean, if you're sitting on your ass for like the 8th day in a row, you know what I mean? And you're not making any use of your vacation or whatever. If instead of like just being angry or depressed or whatever, if you just say, something about what I'm doing is not working. Something about the way I'm talking to myself isn't working, you know, and realize, well, you can do whatever you want. You can learn how to feel totally fine about being a couch potato. You can do that. Nothing wrong with it. And until you realize there's really, truly nothing wrong with being 800 pounds and sitting on the couch and just watching TV for the rest of your life until you die, until you know that at an existential level there's nothing wrong with that, and that the universe doesn't care if you do that or not. No one really does with any sense. No one with any sense thinks that it's important that you be other than you are at a given moment in time. And if they think that in proportion to, you know, their stupidity, their lack of awareness, their lack of understanding about the kind of cosmic sort of okayness of whatever is. You know what I mean? But once you understand that it's totally okay to be exactly like you are, then you're free to be different if you want to, you know? Because then you can start changing because you want to. Very often people want to change, but they aren't able to because they believe they have to, or because they believe, you know what I mean? And I literally, like, I've done that before, and I'm incapable of changing or keeping. I'm incapable of transformation, true transformation, if I think I have to, if I think I need to.
Yep.
Once I realize, at the end of the day, it's pretty much all the same. I mean, you know what I mean? If I'm like a multi-millionaire and in super great shape and everyone loves me, and then I drop dead and we fast forward 200 years, or if everyone hates me and thinks I'm a piece of crap and it's like, boy, what a moron that guy is, and I just hate my life and hate my spouse and hate my kids and hate everything, and I'm gone. Basically the same difference. I'm going to get to a point where it pretty much zeroes out. And so, what does that mean? Does that, I mean, I don't know when people hear that. Does that inspire apathy in you? For me, it's relief. I say, oh, boy, okay, great. Well, given that, I guess I might as well go ahead and just do this because I'm still here. I'm going to be dead one day and it won't matter, but I'm not dead now. So what would I like to do now? You know what I mean?
Yep.
And it's like a weight is lifted off of you. It's as if, I don't know, this making things seem so fucking important. It's like you've got a child and you want that child to run a marathon. You know what I mean? And your strategy for making sure that they do it is to strap like 500 pounds of weights to their back. because it's really important that they run this marathon. To me, it's just like, just take all the pressure off and let them feel how light their body is, you know?
Yes.
And then why don't you just go run a marathon and see if they get interested in it? If it's so fucking important, why don't you do it?
Absolutely. Yes.
You know? And I think that's like a really funny thing too. You know, that you talk to your, you know, all this, you're so mean to your kids because you think it's really important that they learn how to be nice. And it's just kind of like, oh, Jesus. You know?
Mm-hmm.
And again, that's just a non-awareness thing because you don't notice what an asshole you're being. And you don't notice why. You know? Because I'm unaware. I'm unaware, and therefore I'm making choices that don't serve me, and therefore the quality of my experience is unnecessarily bad. And as a result of that, my inclinations are unnecessarily not resourceful. And as a result of that, my behaviors suck, and I get bad results, and I'm in a shitty state, and so I get pissed about those, and then it just kind of perpetuates. And then I just do that whole thing harder, you know? Like I'm screaming at you, and you're crying and upset. And so I say, you know, I get angry about that, so I scream at you louder, because that'll help. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
But it's this ability, it's just all it is resourceful response. That's it. Someone cuts you off in traffic, your knee hurts, someone wronged you. You know, it's not you'll get to the point of doing good more efficiently by thinking in terms of what's resourceful than you would by thinking in terms of what's good. What's good won't always be clear to you. What's resourceful, though, because when you're trying to do what's good, very often you'll be in such bad situations that there's just no room for goodness, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Or the amount of good that's possible to do or create by doing is so negligible that it seems pointless. But resourcefulness is way more resilient than that. I mean, you can do what's resourceful. You can be the last person on earth, you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And it still, you'll scan and you'll say, what's the most resourceful thing I could do right now? You know? Maybe it's just enjoy plundering the Earth's resources. You're the last human being. Might as well have fun. You know what I mean? You're gonna be depressed and sad. That doesn't make any sense. You know what I mean? But you have to get to that point where you just have one responsibility, and that's to respond resourcefully no matter what happens. And then whatever the fuck happens to you, it doesn't constrain your freedom. I mean, it can knock a dent in you. It can cause problems for sure. But and the wonderful thing too is that this responsibility to resourceful response is also retroactive. And so if you've got trauma, you know, oh, but the trauma, it's in my body and it's in my da-da-da and it's in my vibration and I can't, my contract and all this different, okay, what the fuck ever. Do your best to respond resourcefully to it. What if we spent 6 months or a year thinking about how we could respond more resourcefully? Oh, but you don't understand, it's so overwhelming. Okay, well, let's respond resourcefully to that, you know? And I've got this like butterfly net, and like every fucking thing that people say to me about why, and they'll avoid it like the plague. They'll do anything. They'll put like mushrooms and coffee up their ass. They'll take all sorts of weird hallucinogenic drugs. You know, they'll go to retreats. They'll go to like yoga. They'll do anything. They'll do anything but commit to something kind of intangible, like responding resourcefully for a set period of time.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't understand. It takes over my body and I collapse. Okay, fine. Well, at some point you come around, right? Because if not, you just be in a psychotic state for the rest of your life, and I assume we wouldn't be on the phone together. You know, I don't get too many people that are in a permanent, you know, psychotic state calling me up saying, hey, could you help me with this problem? You know, that's one of my rules. I was talking to somebody about this the other day. If you have enough brain power to articulate to me what your problem is, you've got enough brain power to learn something or build a plan or acquire skills that you may not have right now. You may be right about that, but you've got the brain power necessary to respond resourcefully to this thing. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
If you're a vegetable, this stuff might not help you too much, you know?
Yeah.
But if you're not, and if you have the ability to suffer over something, you have the ability to respond resourcefully to it. Those capacities are just kind of one-to-one. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And that's, I think, what spirituality ultimately, I don't even like that word, but if we're talking about the thing it's trying to get towards, what is it like to be in rapport with reality? What is it like to have a harmonious experience? I mean, you can be, you know, in a fight with somebody, and you can be in harmony with the reality of the physical altercation. You know, you can be in court. You can be in court in a contentious divorce. You could be in court about, you know, a big business suing something or whatever. And you can be totally in harmony with the fact that that's the reality that you're dealing with. And it's not saying that I'm not agitated. It's saying that I'm okay with the fact that right now my situation is what it is, and that I'm feeling the way that I am about it. I'm okay with that, and I'm also looking for opportunities to not feel that way. You know what I mean? And create those results. And that's the thing.
That is the thing.
And, you know, at what level, or at some level of you have to. If your life's just a fucking mess, and your experience is a mess, and you don't know where to start, and you're angry and resentful and overwhelmed, and you're also desperate, and you feel incapable of doing anything, and you feel like you shouldn't have to, and you feel like even when you try it doesn't work, and you're afraid of the disappointment of trying again, and you're afraid of what you might do and how you might feel if the next thing you try doesn't work, and all that. At some level of your experience, you have to be willing to do what works. You know, and that means, like, accept the situation and let it be okay. Accept the feeling and let it be okay. Accept the fact that you're resisting the feeling and that's creating extra suffering. Let that be okay. You have to somewhere get your foot in the door of that resourceful response. And once you do that, I mean, I've been in that situation, I've been in that situation back in the past when I reached the limit of my skill set. And the only thing I had left to do was to resist, and then I suffered, and then I almost tried to use that suffering as a bargaining chip to influence reality to change. Because it's like I thought, oh, this person broke up with me. Okay, well, if I could suffer over that enough, at some point reality is going to see, not even the girl, reality is going to see how much I'm suffering and say, okay, I relent and I'm going to change. If I suffer enough over not having a job that I like, or not having a partner that I like, if my suffering can just reach a certain crescendo or a certain fever pitch, then reality will go, damn, okay, let's change around. This is just too much. It won't ever happen, you know? And when I began to realize that's not really how things worked, and I began to do this kind of resourceful response thing, and I built some personal experience doing it, what happened was I would have an instance of rejection or an instance of criticism or an instance of, I'd come up against those things. And there would be this very interesting sensation. There'd be an empty experiential space where suffering had been, you know? There'd be a kind of, what is it? It's not numbness. It's a feeling that's like, okay, this is the place where I would normally be suffering so much and creating so much suffering for myself that I do something really dumb. But now I just don't feel anything except for an awareness. I feel an awareness that I have a chance to do something different here. I can feel what I'm being prompted to do, or what the old version of me would have done. And what's really interesting is that when you interrupt a pattern like that, that's exactly what it feels like. Like you're a train running along a track and all of a sudden there's just no track there and you're just hovering above nothing. And that's when it's time to lay down new tracks. People think that feeling is like a feeling of panic. It's not. That's the feeling of you being awake when you're normally asleep. That's the feeling of you having a choice when you normally don't. Like the reason that you've never felt that kind of disconcerted feeling when you reach that point is because in the past you just started screaming, or you just started crying, or you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. You just lashed out. Look at, is that a ship?
Is it too?
Oh, along those pointy ears. You know what I mean, though? Mm-hmm. Isn't that interesting? People shy away from that, but that's the conscious part, and then you have to make a choice. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And it doesn't have to be the right choice. You just have to make a choice to try something new, and then notice to what extent it does or doesn't work. And that's all there is. That's it. That's the pattern. That's the one pattern, and it applies to every single human experience that has ever happened, could ever happen, will ever happen. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I think when you realize that, then it's just such a relief. You don't worry. I mean, there's nothing to worry about. You don't worry about anything. You know, you just do the best you can, and then you respond resourcefully to the results of that. And if you fail to do something that you could have done, well, guess what? That's just another thing that happens. Like if you fail to do something you could have done to prevent the tragedy, and then the tragedy happens, as soon as it's in the book of what happened, just respond resourcefully to that. That's it. That's your job.